story of me and my wife and our farm of how we got to where we are. So we've got some pictures in the 1870s. We've had ancestors land over here, and we got homestead pictures from back then and whatnot. And the thing in our area was every generation had to buy out the previous generation. That was kind of why how our area did it. I don't know why, what the reasoning was, but that's just how our area did it. Other parts of the state, it just handed down to the next generation. So along comes the farm's doing good. Each generation was growing and improving the farm and modernizing and keeping up. And then the folks were doing really good. I remember all the time, we went to Land O'Lakes things every year because the folks were winning awards for quality milk and quality animals. Dad and my uncle had bulls and cows in the magazines because of quality breeding. Dad was in the magazines a lot for alfalfa production out here for doing a quality job on cropping. And on the cattle, he was in the magazines for innovative design, working with pats and developing some stuff for pats back then. It's just a farmer saw a problem, solved the problem, and Pat's looked at it and like, wow, that looks really nice, painted in Pat's blue. We're going to take that idea if you don't mind. And he's like, sure, go ahead. And so they were really moving forward. And then the 80s hit. The problem with the 80s is in the 70s, the folks had signed a bunch of adjustable rate mortgage loans because things were going really well. And that's just what was around then. And come the 80s, the interest rate goes to 18%, and then a lot of shenanigans with the banks and other stuff, and forced bankruptcies and foreclosures and shutdowns were all around. I mean, you could just drive around the neighborhood and, used to be a dairy farm, this farm, down the road another farm, over here a couple farms, down that way a couple farms. I mean, it just destroyed our area. The 80s just wiped this area out. And so then come in John and Karen as a young kid on this farm. Dad taught me, or both Mom and Dad taught us how to handle the cattle and manage the herd and stuff like that, and fix equipment and run hay and all your daily operations. You had to be a one-man show kind of deal. And so then I went to John Deere College out in Breckenridge, or Wahpeton, North Dakota, and through high school, we came home and fed steers and did cows, and then John Deere, the local dealership, would drop off implements, and I would put them together after school for a job. And then later on, when I got old enough, I could drive to the dealership and then work at the dealership for a few hours a week. And then went to college, and then after college kind of bounced around a couple dealerships, was out at Elbow Lake for a little bit, and then down at Meese Equipment at Watkins for a short time. And then I was just like, piss on this noise, Meese, the boys had just taken over the dealership, and they didn't quite know how to handle employees. They were kind of they were daddy's kids, they could have used they were good guys, but they could have been knocked out once or twice, that would have straightened them up pretty good. But they were good guys, and they run a hell of a business now. But there was, at the time, it's just like, well, this is stupid. Milk was $18, so I came home, I got in with a bank, and the bank's like, yeah, we'll get you into dairy, we'll get you back. So we bought a bunch of cows, and then I was milking, and then I met the wife in 99, and we were married in 2000, so just a pretty fast engagement and marriage. And then the bank's like, well, if we went back to the bank, like, hey, we need to update our feeding, update our pasture. Pretty much everything needs to be updated here. Everything was old from the 60s and 70s and pretty wore out. And we needed some upgrading to move the herd forward. And the bank's like, you bet. Here's more money, buy a lot more cows. And when you get that herd, then come back, and then we'll help you do the rest of the farm. And we're like, okay. So we bought all these cows. I mean, we had cattle just falling out the windows. I mean, we had cows here, oh my God, it's a 60 cow barn, and we had 70, 80 milk cows. It was just a pain. and everything's falling apart around us. And we went back to the banks, like, okay, we've got the herd, we've got 30% collateral to get the house and the 40 around the barn so we can own it. The folks then can move on in life, and we then we'll rebuild the 40 to manage the herd. And the bank's like, dairy's kind of tough right now. How about we just wait a couple years? And we're like, we don't have a couple years. We need this now. And then at the same time, milk price tanked. It went under $9 a hundredweight. And then finally in 2003, the wife and I just threw our hands up in the air. Like, there is nobody that's going to work with us. We never missed a bill or anything, but nobody would work with you because you were dairy, and dairy was tough at the time. We just threw our hands up in the air, had an auction, and walked away. I went to the cities for work. Worked in the city since 2003 as in the laborers union, and then eventually got my 49ers card. And so I had both union cards, and I was a heck of an employee in both unions. I was a guy that could jump in the ditch, put pipe in the ground, do the concrete work, do the brute work, and then jump in the backhoe and do quality cuts and hop in the payloader and do, man, I did some good work in a payloader. God, that was so fun. But then did the pile driving and cofferdams up on the Drayton Bridge in North Dakota, worked on the Mall of America, hung on the outside of IDS building and the city center tower in Minneapolis, did Bolson chair off of 10-story buildings, done a lot, a lot of dangerous, crazy stuff, doing them cofferdams. You're running on a 1-foot beam 30 feet in the air with no tie-offs, and you're just out there every day, all day. And then finally, so then Dad was running the land again. So in the meantime, while I was working in the cities and working out of state, worked in the oil field in western North Dakota for one winter to try and help get some more money. In the meantime, Dad was running the land. We had a little tiny John Deere 7700 combine. I had the 4640 and my 4020. Had an old 8-row planter we bought out of the weeds, and I welded up an old chisel plow and an old disc together to make a disc chisel. So I did custom, and I had the 3970 chopper. So I would chop for one neighbor, chisel plow for a different neighbor, plant for this guy, and do row crop cultivating for that guy. And I just worked for all the neighbors for everything I could to keep buying and upgrading or paying for my equipment. And we were renting 20 acres from that time. And then in 2010 or 11, Dad said, well, if you can pay rent, you can rent the land. And so at that time we ended up buying an 80 from the folks, and then we bought a 60 from some contractors that went bankrupt. So we got that at a fair price, and we bought this at a good price to help move the folks so they could move into retirement a little bit. So in 2014, we went basically from renting 30 or 40 acres to buying 130 acres and renting another couple hundred more acres. So we went from 30 to 300 acres in a couple years. That's when we upgraded to the 8820 combine. And now since then, I mean, you guys are right here with me. The white planter upgrade, the grain cart, the pickup, the combine upgrade, and the repairs of everything else going along with it, and the transition to the soil health farming and stuff like that. And so the coming back, the bringing back beef, or bringing back cattle in the form of beef and not dairy. This is all real time, guys. That's how I'm 5th generation, but starting from scratch is because the folks were lucky to survive the 80s by being on the land, let alone to stay farming. And so they didn't have a fleet to hand down. I had to buy into it at market price to be able to do this. And so yeah, it's been a tough road. And this year, I quit my job this year so I could focus on the farm for 1 year. We might break even in 2018 with the exceptional yields. So then moving into 2019, we just need to just keep plugging away and hope we can can be around for 2020. It's year by year, you know. It's not gravy train. I'm not Minnesota Millionaire. I don't have old money to fall onto. I've got a good relationship with a bank. If something happens, I have to go to the bank and be like, well, funny story, you know that money you borrowed me last spring? I might need a little more time to pay that back, but I also need to operate next year too. So, yeah, let's figure something out. So it is a tough road. It's been a very hard road for us, and you know, spent my whole life working on this farm to just be a new farmer now. Kind of odd. I remember I was 10 and 12 years old when Dad taught me how to run the baler. And then my cousin and brother would be here, and so I run the baler and get that sucker dialed in, adjusted for the day, and then organize the three of us to get stuff unloaded and moving, you know, and kept stuff going. But yeah, so I don't know. That's how we wound up here, and that's where we're at. And hopefully the wife with her beef herd, hopefully in a couple of years, we can get up to a couple hundred cows. And then there'd be enough beef there for her to maybe quit her job too. And so then we can farm together like a husband and wife are supposed to. I don't know. I'm going to leave it right there. You guys asked the questions as to what I'm missing here for information. Excuse me, I don't know where that come from. Oh, maybe it was that I had to help cook a bunch of bacon for the wife, and I might have stolen some of it. But anyhow, it's kind of rude. But anyhow, yeah, you guys asked the questions for information or gaps in time here that I'm missing. But I'll leave it right there because I don't know what more to say, other than we just keep working every day to eventually someday when we're old to get there. I don't know. I will make dang sure that this is a hand-me-down farm to my nephews. They've got their careers, you know. They're just coming out of college now. Well, the one's just coming out of college. The other one, he's still got a couple years to be a big fancy doctor. And then they can, at whatever point in life, they'll get the farm. Whether they like it or not, they're getting the farm. And the wife and I are making sure that we've got long-term care for us if we ever have to go to a nursing home, so the farm is protected from that. We got a good life insurance, so the farmer's protected there. So we're making dang sure that when them boys get this farm, that they're not going to be burdened with debt and have to sell stuff off just to operate a farm when they're in their 50s and 60s. And hopefully in 10 or 15 years, I don't know, maybe 5 years, it all depends how things go. It'd be nice for us to grow big enough to where we could eventually bring them back to the farm if they ever wanted to. And so that's the whole goal, is to keep it in the family. Maybe they won't do it, but maybe they'll have kids that would be a dream, is that one of their kids would be like, you know what, I'm 16 and I just want to run the farm for the rest of my life. That you bet. So yeah, you guys asked the questions for stuff I'm missing. I got to get going. We got a family Christmas today with the one cousins on mom's side, and I better get home and get changed and get ready before the wife wrings my neck. But guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you this week. Today's Sunday. Next week I'll be back to work with some regular videos.